Can I? Oh, somebody else get this. Oh, is there a couple of mics on? Oh, off, yeah. I'm still getting picked up. It might be the same. It's still the same. One, two. One, two. Thank you for that. Capture your image. schools. If council officers think that's necessary.
From what I gathered, Chair, you were saying your proposal was just to invite people in. Is that right?
Sorry, Martin.
For what you'd said, Chair, your proposal was just to invite people in to make a presentation to council. Happy enough to second that, Chair. And then when you're ready, I'd like to make some comments as well, just under Chair's business. Thanks.
Martin, could you say that last bit?
But when you're finished with the proposal, if you invite me back in, I'd like to just to make some comments on the points you've raised in Chair's business, please.
Absolutely. So, can I get clarification from any other? Okay. Okay.
Yes, members are confused.
Thank you. Are members okay with that proposal, seconded by Councillor Riley? Does anyone object to inviting in the?
Point of clarity, Chair, just are you seeking to bring them in before audit or in before full council?
I think it would be the relevant committee. Are members happy with that? Okay, well, I'll take silence or as agreement, so that's fine. Councillor Riley, you indicated you wanted to come in.
Yeah, Chair, just on the point you raised in your chairperson's business, just formally to thank you for the chair personship over the past 12 months and to wish you well going forward. And I feel you've done a good job keeping everybody treated fairly in the committee over the past 12 months. So just to thank you for that. And then in relation to your comments about Little Amal, I think it was great to see not only Little Amal come to Derry, but Derry come to her as well. It was great to have the Guildhall Square full of people with that refugee welcome message, and encouraging people to give everyone in the position that Little Amal would find herself in that sense. It's a great piece of art, and I think it is important that we do at all times try and indicate that refugees are welcome, and we should all reach out and give them a huge Gabe Meal of Falls. Just so for anyone who didn't get along to the event outside Guildhall's, the Guildhall building and the Peace Bridge today, I'd encourage them to go along to Free Dairy Corner later this evening. Thanks, Chair.
Anyone else wish to comment? Councillor Donnelly.
I'm a Chair, and Chair, I'm not a member of this committee, but I would like to thank you for your stewardship over the last year, and found you to be very fair and equitable. So thank you. I'd just like to put on record my support for the motion here. You know, a number of months ago, over the last year or whatever, we were told that, you know, if we had Stormont up and running, that almost it would be the answer to all our ills. But unfortunately, that's not that hasn't happened. There's a lot of anger here. You know, I know all the parties have supported for the pay and grading review. It's time this was implemented. You know, again, these are vital, important roles for education for our children, and you know, children are our future. And if that's being damaged, then you know it will have an impact. And there's a feeling that amongst some of the unions that their members are being used as pawns, which brings me on the Amal. It was great to see it outside there just before I came in. Very poignant. And that sort of, you know, when we talk about pawns, we see immigrants in that now being used as scapegoats for, you know, lack of housing and problems with the health service and that. So, you know, and I think it's becoming an issue. It's becoming a huge issue, particularly in the 26 counties. And I can see it becoming more prevalent here in the 6 counties. And it's something that that needs to be tackled. People need to punch up towards the government, not punch down on people who are unfortunate or who are suffering. So again, Chair, I'd like to thank you too for your stewardship over the last year. Caramagat.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly and Councillor Riley. Anyone else wish to comment? Councillor Jackson.
Good Chair, and I suppose firstly, to congratulate yourself and all officers for the work of the committee. And it's that we have been able to get through the business of the committee throughout the year, and without any major hiccups. So that's on you. So congratulations in that regard. In relation to the dollar items that were raised under Chair's business, each of them are huge, and each of them are quite significant, and you would like more time. Particularly in relation, like it was very emotional this afternoon in Guildhall Square to see, and the story of Amal is something that we've all learned. You know, and that there was a bit of that we were anticipating what Amal's going to look like. We learned a bit about her before she came to visit the city. And that education piece is important. And one of the things that struck me today, is you've seen the huge crowds coming across the Peace Bridge, was the number of children, the number of school children that have been learning about Amal, have been learning about the plight of refugees during school, and then it's culminated in seeing Amal in our city and around familiar surroundings. So that in itself is really encouraging, and that education piece is going to be vital as Amal travels the length and breadth of this island. In relation to the education workers, absolutely, 100% support the motion or the proposal, and that's where, given the huge value that we place on non-teaching staff within our schools. I think there's been numerous motions highlighting that, and it had its proper place. But and it's only right that it's raised, and if there's anything that we can do, like if there's a further deputation that allows that discussion to take place again, for us to highlight our support for the non-teaching staff within schools. But it's going back to the point that Councillor Donnelly had made in relation to the restoration of the executive, and it being the solution to everything. It's not, and but having a government is much better than not having a government. We've seen what not having a government looks like, and it certainly doesn't serve our schools, certainly doesn't serve our health service, and it doesn't serve public services. We know that how the challenges councils have faced as a result of not having a government. So we need a government, but we need an adequate budget as well. And the very fact that the bid from non-teaching staff, the pay and review body was accepted, the business case was passed, demonstrates that there's support there within government. They deliver for people. The big issue is that there isn't the adequate budget. And that's coming from Westminster. So we do need to see our public services funded properly. We do need to see people's wages supported properly. An adequate budget needs to come along with that. So if there's anything that we can do to support that through council, we would really relish and welcome the opportunity to do so. So in relation to everything that you've raised in under Chair's business, hugely supportive of, and we again just reiterate our thanks for the way you've conducted the Business Release Committee over the past year. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jackson. Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in, and just to thank yourself for your term of office and the officer team as well for the work put in. It can be a difficult committee. There's that much in it, and sometimes it can go above people's heads. But as I say, I do thank yourself for chairing it, and your vice chair, and again for the officers for being able to explain anything that we've asked for. I think it was Councillor Leonard, isn't it? That's what I wrote down. But thank you there. And again, Chair, just in regards to item 4, declaration of interest, I'll declare for now at the stage number 9 as the North West Regional Waste Management Group, and I sit on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Kerrigan. Anyone else, or Alderman Guy?
Thanks, Chair. And although I was a sort of latecomer to the committee this year, just thanks for all the way that you conducted all the meetings that I attended. And just to say that I support the proposal that you have there. I think that the teaching staff just need our support everywhere. They all do a good job and they're not paid enough for it. And I'll declare an interest in item 9, or no, sorry, item 8, PCSP.
Thank you, Alderman Guy, and look, thanks for everybody's comments. A compliment these days is hard to get, so I'm sure, and thank you again to the officer team for what they've done over the last year. I did skip agenda item number 4, so if anyone else would like to declare an interest, you can do that right now.
Chair, PCSP member as well. Declare an interest. Thank you.
Councillor Leonard, thank you.
Chair, I'll declare for PCSP also.
Alderman Kerrigan, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
CSP.
Any other declarations? Okay, thank you, members. We'll move on now to agenda item number 6, matters arising from the open minutes of the committee meeting held on the 19th of March. Are members happy to move on? Okay, agenda item number 7, and that Denise is gonna go over that. It's the schedule of meetings for the Assurance Audit and Risk Committee for next year.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to seek your approval for the schedule of meetings for this committee for 24-25. You will recall that the schedule of meeting for all committee was agreed at the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee back in March. However, it was indicated at that committee that the dates of this committee can sometimes change to meet the requirements of our annual governance report and schedule. So we have reviewed the plan of work for the committee for 24-25, and in order to meet the requirements of our schedule, it's necessary that a revised schedule of dates is approved. Members, these are usually the dates that we go with every year anyway, so they're no different for you. Member services have checked to make sure that the dates are available in your diaries. They don't conflict with any other dates, and they're currently being held. So it's just ready to seek your approval to go with those dates. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Is everyone okay with this schedule in the agenda? Okay, I think that is accepted by the committee. We'll move on now to agenda item number 8, internal audit reports, and Deborah is going to take the lead on that.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to update members on the internal audit work completed within Derry City and Strabane District Council in the period March 24 to May 24. The following audit work has been finalised recently: the internal audit of building control income collection, the internal audit of Derry and Strabane PCSP for the 23-24 financial year, follow-up internal audit of district registration service income collection, and other internal audit work. I'll start first with the internal audit of building control income collection. Paragraphs 3.1.1 to paragraphs 3.1.5 provide some background on the building control service and the level of work which they undertake. The audit of building control entailed internal audit reviewing areas of income collection, debt management, relevant risks in the building control risk register, and performance management. Internal audit noted that for the samples reviewed, all income due to building control was received with only 2 small exceptions. All lodgements of income received were traced to DCSDC's bank account. Internal audit noted that in general, prescribed processes for dealing with building control applications were followed. Internal audit noted that the building control risks register, including the 5 risks as identified as relevant to the scope of this audit, was regularly updated by the Head of Environment, and that strategic performance management measures were in place. Internal audit identified a number of control weaknesses across the areas reviewed as part of this audit. Internal audit identified weaknesses in written procedures for all areas of building control income collection operation and control weaknesses in the building control software system. A lack of reconciliation of expected income to actual income was identified, as well as inaccuracies in how income information was recorded. Weaknesses were identified in cash handling processes and in the application process, and a lack of supervisory checks over many areas of building control income collection operations was noted. Internal audit also identified weaknesses in the invoicing process and in the process to manage outstanding debt. Based on the control weaknesses identified by internal audit, there is considerable risk that the system will fail to meet its objectives. As a result, this audit has been given the audit opinion of improvement needed. Overall, although there are controls in place to ensure the building control income is collected and banked, from an internal audit perspective, there is a need to make improvements and enhancements to the current control environment so that members and senior management are assured that systems are robust. Internal audit acknowledges that this is the first audit of building control since the formation of DCSDC and the merging of the building control systems of the legacy councils. As a result, internal audit have identified areas where the service could be streamlined and improvements made. Internal audit have made a number of recommendations to improve the control environment. The key priority 1 recommendations relate to improving the control environment in the areas as outlined in paragraph 3.1.11. Management have responded positively to the recommendations raised, and the table of recommendations with implementation dates is included in the report, which is attached at Appendix A for information. The second audit undertaken I'm going to report on is the internal audit of Derry and Strabane PCSP for the 23-24 financial year. Again, paragraphs 3.2.1 and 3.2.2 provide some background to PCSP for the 23-24 financial year. This audit was requested by the PCSP manager, included within the 23-24 internal audit plan of work, to comply with the requirement within the Joint Committee funding agreement to have an internal audit carried out. The purpose of the review was to provide an independent professional opinion on the adequacy and effectiveness of internal control, risk and governance processes. Internal audit reviewed the risk management, corporate governance and control arrangements, the policies and procedures, financial and other, the administration and operational expenditure, purchasing, procurement and monitoring reporting arrangements in place for Derry and Strabane PCSP. In addition, internal audit reviewed progress made in relation to the implementation of previous internal audit recommendations regarding grant funding. Internal audit were satisfied with the risk management framework in place and the corporate governance and control arrangements in relation to the following areas: PCSP governance arrangements regarding the conduct of meetings, etc., PCSP code of practice, PCSP members handbook, insurance, member training and internal audit arrangements in place. Internal audit were also satisfied that policies and procedures were in place in compliance with financial guidelines, however have made some recommendations to improve these further. Internal audit is satisfied with audit testing results of administration and operational expenditure. In relation to purchasing and procurement, internal audit is satisfied that for the sample of payments reviewed, all had a purchase order attached and the timeliness of the purchase order was correct and that it was completed and authorised prior to the invoice date. Testing showed that there is segregation of duties in the procurement process, that there was compliance with procurement requirements regarding quotations, tenders, and that the sample of invoices reviewed were all paid within the required 30-day time frame. Internal audit is also satisfied that appropriate monitoring and reporting mechanisms are in place and operating effectively in relation to the PCSP, that is, the plans, budget, quarterly claims, quarterly progress reports, accounts, and annual report. In addition, internal auditors are satisfied that the 3 previous internal audit recommendations raised in relation to grant funding that were not fully implemented at the time frame of the 22-23 PCSP internal audit are now fully implemented. Internal audit have made 6 recommendations to improve the control environment. The key priority 1 recommendation relates to the authorisation of purchase orders. Management have responded positively to the recommendations raised, and the table of recommendations with implementation dates is included in the report, which is attached at Appendix B for information. The next audit then is the follow-up internal audit of District Registration Service income collection. In March 2023, internal audit completed an audit of District Registration Service income collection, and based on the audit work carried out, the controls in place at that time provided the assurance level of improvement needed. In total, 28 recommendations were made to strengthen the control environment. Internal audit recently completed a follow-up audit to determine whether the agreed recommendations had been implemented. In assessing the level of implementation, internal audit reviewed relevant supporting documentation and undertook sample testing. In summary, as a result of follow-up testing, internal audit is satisfied that significant progress has been made in the implementation of the outstanding recommendations. Of the 28 recommendations made, 24 of these have now been fully implemented and 4 partially implemented. As a result of the significant progress that has been made, this follow-up audit has been given the assurance level of satisfactory, which is the highest rating available. The current position in each of the recommendations and the details of follow-up testing are set out in the report, which is attached at Appendix C for information. Internal audit have also carried out a number of other pieces of work as follows: the reconciliation work on Culmore landfill royalty income, annual stocktake assurance work, and internal audit also continue to be available across the Council to carry out reviews of financial, governance and operational arrangements. Further details of these pieces of work are included in paragraphs 4.1 to 3.4.3. There are no implications as a result of this work. Happy to take any comments or questions, and just to let you know, managers are here today from each of the areas in which an audit report has been presented if you have any questions to be directed to management. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deborah. I'll open it up to the floor now. I have Councillor Leonard and then Brenda.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just say, Deborah, thanks very much for the report. There's a lot of work gone into that. I suppose there's building control one, it's disappointing to see that there's so many actions. However, they're identified now and there's a plan in place. But what it really emphasises is the importance of the role of internal audit, and it also really emphasises the importance of this committee as well. So just acknowledge your work and thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Leonard, and I'll call on Brona Slevin now, our independent advisor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deborah, for the very fulsome report. It's really good to see the work done. Just wanted to ask a couple of questions in relation to the building control income collection audit. The first question is in relation to, based on the level of recommendations, and indeed, as recognised, there are a number there in the report, what would you consider to be the level of risk to the organisation based on these recommendations? And the second question would be, when would you project carrying out the follow-up audit? I know you carry out once you get a report like this, and I know in the past it's been around 6 months. So if you could give us some indication when you anticipate carrying out that, so we can be assured later on about these recommendations being fulfilled. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I'll answer your first question, or second question first, if that's okay, Brona. So in relation to when we anticipate undertaking a follow-up audit, as you know, whenever we issue an audit report with an opinion of improvement needed or major improvement needed, we then usually schedule a follow-up audit to take place within approximately 6 months. Due to the number of recommendations in this report, some of the implementation dates are around the 6-month period. So we will probably give an extra few months to allow make sure, you know, there allow time for them to be implemented before we go back. But we have included a follow-up audit of building control within the approved plan of work for this financial year, which was approved at the last committee. So it will be undertaken within the current financial year. In relation to the level of risk, as I say, the audit has been given the audit opinion of improvement needed, and the description of the risk attached relating to that is included in Appendix 2. You'll also note that Section 4 of the Building Control Report has looked at risk management, and within that section we made a recommendation that management update the risks in the Building Control Risk Register relevant to this audit to reflect the findings of this report. But as you know, we see risk management as management's responsibility, so I'm not sure if management want to update any further in relation to that.
Sure. Thanks for that. Content members that to provide assurance to members, and I suppose service users, that the team are fully committed to implement in full all of the recommendations as set out in the report, and at present we're working through those recommendations in conjunction with colleagues across council in different sections to ensure that the additional controls are put in place. The risk register will be reviewed in terms of that and updated, the report sets out that there are gaps in the control procedures, and those gaps are the issue as opposed to the entire operation of building control. The report details the number of inspections and planning applications that are received throughout the year. So whilst there are some gaps, the service is functioning and is functioning properly, but yeah, we do accept the recommendations and the need to put those additional controls in place.
Thanks, Conor. Did you want to come in as well, Garrett?
I suppose we fully take on board all the recommendations. We've met a number of times as the senior leadership team within the Directorate in order to follow that up, and obviously happy to work through implementing the changes as quickly as we can, and also to see how we can work with colleagues across the wider organisation to make sure that there's harmony across the other services, which will be due to get audited as well in the coming years as well. So thank you.
Okay, Brona. I've got myself and then Councillor Riley. Look, these were thorough audits that were done internally, so I want to commend the work that was done there. And then looking at the building control income audit, there was 45 recommendations, and I have to say, reading through them, I was somewhat alarmed, and I absolutely support the recommendations. But when I looked at it, lack of reconciliation between expected income and actual income was identified, inaccuracies in how income information was recorded, weaknesses in cash handling processes and in the application process, and supervisory checks that were weak. and then weaknesses in invoicing processes. So look, those are very, very basic things that I think that from a public transparency point of view, I think it's good that we've had this audit, and I'm glad to see that the recommendations, but that when I read it, I was somewhat surprised that kind of basic stuff. And I acknowledge that this is the first audit that's been done since the merger of the two council areas. So look, that was my initial response, and I just want to kind of give voice to that. So, you know, I don't know if there's any further comments from officers or any other members. Obviously, Councillor Riley's waiting to come in. And then just on the audit, the PCSP audit, I mean, look, I did think that there was much fewer recommendations. There's only 6 recommendations there, but one of them is whether or not we need a separate fraud response plan. That's recommendation number 3. I think that the authorizations of procurement orders, I think that is purchase orders has been identified, and that's obviously very, very important. But I suppose, like, again, I want to just highlight that the fact that there is a proposal for a separate fraud response plan did catch my eye, and that's the sort of thing I think is, so if anyone has further comments on that would be helpful. Councillor Riley.
Thanks, Chair, for bringing me in. I suppose it's like others, just to thank Deborah and the other officers for their responses in relation to, the implementation of the recommendations and the timeliness of all of that. I suppose the one that jumps out at me in relation to the building control one is page 78, I think it is, in terms of recommendation 3, about the software system not being fit for purpose, and that being the view of all 11 councils, not just our council. And I'm wondering, is there any cost savings that can be identified in terms of designing a new system and working with other councils that would be facing the same sort of issues that we're facing? I see that the line is, I think it says that that consequent discussions are taking place with the developer of council's asset management service provider. Is that, I suppose, council's plural or our council? Thanks.
Chair, happy to do that. There's discussions going on at 2 levels. One is across BCNI. All councils have issues with the current system and its ability to provide, I suppose, a joined up, comprehensive service administration backup in terms of the building control processes. So there are discussions regionally and looking at discussions with providers on that. In terms of the last report we brought in March was IEB, our own system software provider, and we're going to have some discussions with them to see if they can look to implement the system. The shortcomings, I mean, the system wasn't designed for what it's supposed to do, and it's really just a legacy software system that's been in use, hasn't been updated or changed in years, and adds to the difficulties in trying to ensure a proper and efficient service.
Thanks, Connor. Martin, did you have a response to that? Happy enough.
Thanks, Connor, for that. Thanks, Chair.
Rona, if you want to back in there. Anyone else?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just observing a couple of times there, officers mentioned that this is the first time building control, the income collection anyway, element of it, has been audited since, I presume, it's 2015. And it just strikes me that internal audit are offering a very supportive and constructive service to the organisation. That's my observation, sitting on this side of the table. And I'm wondering, would it be worth looking to see, are there any other services within the organisation that haven't been audited in that length of time? I mean, realistically, what are we talking about? 9 years is a long time not to have been exposed to some sort of internal audit. And therefore, maybe is something I'd ask the officers if they would look at and come back to us. I know we have our plan and we look at that every year, and we have our strategy for over the 4 years, etc. But just maybe something to maybe just take a quick look to make sure there's no other service that's been left for such a long time through no fault of anybody's other than the plans that we've had in place. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Brona. Did you want to come in, Denise?
Thank you. Thanks, Brona, for that. Obviously, from internal audit's perspective, we obviously have our audit needs assessment, which is, the whole environment of council, where every service area is categorised and prioritised, and that's where we, develop our audit plan from that. And it is very difficult because we only have limited resources and there's only so many areas that we can look at. So that's how we prioritise our resources in terms of looking at our audit needs assessment. We sit down every year, we look at that in terms of, you know, and if there's a number of factors taken into consideration in terms of income, expenditure, risk factors, fraud, potential fraud, all that, and that obviously comes into committee. So we do have the audit needs assessment for a 5-year period. Then we bring that in, then what's approved, what's prioritised from that. But we can certainly look at that and see there's probably very few. And I mean, we would have been looking, the areas that would have been brought into committee and would have had a huge comprehensive audit carried out would have been our high risk areas. So now we're starting to move down the other areas. Obviously, they don't appear to be high risk until you maybe actually go in and look at them, and then there's a lot of recommendations in them then. So that's how we prioritise our resources, because it's a finite resource and you can only do so many audits in the year. But we'd certainly look at it, and if there's any area from the audit needs assessment that we feel hasn't been looked at and needs to be looked at, we can, you know, try to rejig things then. But we're trying to give assurance in the areas where we feel need assurance based on the resources that's available as well. If that makes sense, Brona.
Sorry, can I just say, sorry, James Harding here. Can I just say, our audit needs assessment in the last few, we've categorised our systems A, B, and C, and we've been systematically working through the A systems. And then, I mean, we've also taken board requests from the committee. Licensing over an example, there was a few concerns. We put that up to the top of our list, and we were hoping to bring in June a comprehensive report which lists all the systems that we've looked at and then breaks down within those the areas within those, so that members can have a look at the sort of the holistic your risk environment in terms of the internal audit work that's been carried out on those audit needs assessments, just to keep us right. We believe we're going in the right way in terms of comprehensively looking at every single council system until we have them completed, and then we'll revisit it and review it again. But we'll try and bring a report in June which will list all the audits that's carried out, the areas within them, and let you have a whole look at where the progress that has been made.
Did you want that, John?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chair. Just a very quick further note just in the back of that. I think it was a good question. So I think James's response there will provide that comprehensive overview for members. There are quite a few services that have actually been audited several times. And again, it's that risk-based approach. But just to draw members' attention again to paragraph 3.14 in the report, the single biggest assurance in respect of this matter is the restructuring of the building control service that we undertook recently to ensure that we got to this place where we were able to service the needs of internal audit, provide a robust management response to what it would find. And so, as we've said in that, the head of environment, Conor Canning, working with Karen, is now bringing a degree of robustness to that service that let's just say, maybe previously lacked. So we're trying to ensure that all of the issues are now dealt with. So hopefully that restructure provides in itself a degree of assurance to members that the matters will be reviewed very seriously moving forward.
Councillor Donnelly.
Chair, I was going to leave it the full council, but just for if officers maybe could give me a steer on this. Said that this is the first exercise of this sort since 2015, but it was only a couple of years ago. I'm not sure. I think Alderman Kerrigan might have been vice chair at the time. There was a very controversial report regarding the PCSP, and that was to do with purchasing orders and plane tickets that we didn't know who was on it, and cigarettes for vulnerable adults, and funding being handed out without charitable status being checked and all that. Could any of this is there any of this that should have been picked up in the recommendations following that controversy? Is there any of this that could have been or should have been seen then rather than now at this stage? Good.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Donnelly. The PCSP audit is a requirement as part of their funding agreement to be audited, so it is included on the annual plan of work to be undertaken each year. And as James has said, the building control audit, we prepare an audit needs assessment. It's like a longer term 5-year plan, and then from that an annual plan is developed. Obviously, you're trying to the Purpose of that is to target your limited resource in the areas of highest need. So there were 2 separate audits, but the PCSP is audited a full audit each year as part of, because it is a requirement of their funding agreement. So, thanks.
Councillor Donnelly, happy with that? Any further questions from members? Okay, so we were only asked for comments on the recommendations. So if everybody's happy, we'll move on now to item 9, the Northwest Regional Waste Management Audit Strategy, and Brian O'Neill from the NI Audit Office is going to introduce that for us.
Thank you. The strategy, don't propose a good strategy page by page, just to highlight the main points, Chair, if that's okay. The strategy will be familiar to you from previous years, and indeed the same strategy for the full council. Basically, strategy outlines how we're going to conduct the audit, talks a bit about materiality, what our audit approach is going to be, the audit timetable, fees and staffing. And I suppose if you could maybe just turn your attention to page 3 of the strategy, page 228, the actions for the audit committee to discuss whether our assessment of the risks, material statement and financial statements is complete, whether management has plans in place to address the risks, our proposed audit response to those risks, and whether management have any knowledge of any actual suspected or alleged fraud affecting the Northwest Region Waste Management Group. And I'm going to just take it to the only risk that we have identified in this audit is at page 8 of our report and page 233 of the pack, and that's in relation to the management overriding controls, which is standard risk in every audit that we look out for. And how we're going to address that is by testing the appropriateness of journal entries recorded in the general ledger. We'll review the accounting estimates for biases and evaluate whether the circumstances producing the bias represent a risk of material misstatement due to fraud, and we'll consider any significant transactions that are outside the normal course of the business. So the next page basically outlines the audit timetable, fees and staffing. We should get the accounts for the group towards the end of June. We'll commence our audit in August and hopefully have everything certified by the end of September. We'll issue a final report to the Charge of Governance by the end of October and the annual audit letter by the end of November. That's a quick run through the strategy, Chair. Happy to take any questions or comments on it.
Thanks, Brian. Or does anyone have any questions or comments for Brian? Is everyone happy to endorse the contents or the audit strategy? Okay, no disagreement with that. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, we'll move on to item 10, risk review processes and update on council service risk registers, and Denise is going to take that.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to update you the purpose of this report is to update you and seek your endorsement on the ongoing risk review processes in accordance with our risk management strategy, and to provide an update on the service risk registers reviewed, which have been completed during the last quarter. So members, you'll note in the report the risk registers that have been reviewed since January. There's quite a few there, and there's also a number of registers which have been closed down during that period, and they were funded registers, so you'll note that from the report. We have attached, as always, members, a sample of the risk registers reviewed during the period for your information. And upon review of the completed risk registers, members, you will note that all the risks identified have controls in place, and where there are high scoring risks, further actions are in place to ensure that all efforts are being taken to mitigate against the risk occurring. Members, you'll also note that a number of risks have a score of 15 or more, which would be classified as critical in accordance with our risk management strategy. As a result of this, action plans are in place to mitigate the risks as far as possible, and a summary of these are attached for members' information. And following on from our previous committee members, we have also attached a risk variance report, which shows the changes in the critical risk scoring during the previous 12-month period. Happy to take any comments or questions on the risk reports, members. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Denise. Any members? Rona, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Denise, for the report. And I just want to say thank you as well for including a critical risks variance report. I have to say, I think that's a very useful report to have because it just draws our attention straight to the variances as they are. And indeed, that triggered a couple of questions very clearly as soon as I saw it from myself in relation to the strategic finance. The two risks there moved quite considerably. Well, one went down by 5 and the other went down by 10. And I guess given what we've heard before about the finances and all the difficulties that not only this council but all councils face and all the businesses also face, it was reassuring in one way to see the risk level drop. But I just wanted to see if I could get some further information into the reasoning of the drop in both of those risks. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Brona. I think Alfie's online and is going to respond to that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Bruna, the first one is inability to deliver our ambitious capital programme. That's been reduced from 20 to 15. So obviously 15 still represents a real critical risk. So obviously it scores red. The reason for the reduction in the score by 5 is because of the progress that had been made in relation to a number of the mitigations. So I suppose in that regard, the first key bit of progress is the rates investment. We secured 1.5% rates investment towards our capital programme as part of the recent rates process. Number 2, the leisure VAT case is now significantly progressed, and we're hopeful that in the coming weeks that will be concluded in our favour. Number 3, work continues in relation to the successful conclusion of the airport business case. So there is still a way to go, but those 3 items of progress are what I would regard as very substantial progress in relation to the mitigations. So as a result, that score has been reduced from 20 to 15, but as you will note, it still is a critical risk. The second one is in relation to the long-term financial stability of council, and that has been reduced from 25 to 15. Again, 15 is a critical risk score, and whilst obviously pay pressures and central government grant cuts continue and will continue probably for a period of time yet, again there's been progress in relation to a number of the mitigations, and I'll run through what I see those as. So number 1, we don't have the continued impact of the pandemic hanging over us, which we would have had a couple of years ago, which would have had very substantial implications for our income. So that risk is now gone. Number 2, inflation is reducing. Number 3, rate support grants, obviously a big issue, but we have built forecast cuts into our rates estimates process. That was obviously difficult, but we did make financial provision for cuts. Number 4, we retain a significant financial contingency reserve because of the volatility and because of the risk around government grant cuts, etc. And number 5, we obviously have our annual rates process where we engage through our finance working group and through the committees to agree a robust rate. So again, as a result, that score has been reduced from 25 to 15, but it still remains a significant risk, as you will note. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Alfie. Brona, are you okay with that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alfie. That's very comprehensive. I know we have information included in the pack as well, but it's good to hear that from yourself as well. So thank you for that.
Any other members wish to comment? Happy to move on to the next agenda item. Okay. Thanks, officers, for the content of that. Next agenda item is 11, performance review. It's open for information. Denise is available if anyone has a question or a comment. Okay, everyone happy to move to confidential?